Hello GCSEers, year 10 and 11. You join me in a traffic jam. Why am I here? Well, actually I'm outside Putney Vale Cemetery, just off the A3. Rather nice entrance. It's a bit loud out here, so let's go inside where it's a little bit more peaceful to explain why exactly I'm here and what's that got to do with your Russian history GCSE course. Well, that's a bit better, a bit quieter here. So here I am at Putney Vale Cemetery, and actually this is the final resting place of Alexander Kerensky. Alexander Kerensky is a man who bursts on to our GCSE course very powerfully, but very, very briefly, in between the two revolutions of 1917. Of course, there was a revolution in February of 1917, the abdication of the Tsar, and a provisional government is formed eventually. Kerensky finds his way as the leader of the provisional government, but then there is a revolution against him. We'll go into a bit more detail when I find his grave in amongst all of this. So let me have a little hunt. There's actually quite a few other famous people buried here at Putney Vale. Sir Bruce Ismay, who was the man who built and financed the Titanic, he is buried here. Howard Carter, the man who discovered Tutankhamun's tomb and perhaps had a curse on him for the rest of his life. David Lean, the director of Lawrence of Arabia. See the Lawrence of Arabia video for that as well. So quite a few famous people here, but I think Alexander Kerensky has to be the most significant one of them all. Now, I've not found Kerensky, but I have found an interesting war grave. I just want to point these out. No one of any ultimate significance, but this man who was from the Royal Navy Air Service. I just wanted to highlight to you the beautiful Portland stone that these war graves are made from. Made from the same stone, if you saw the World War II video, the Stoke Newington Town Hall, one with the blackout paint, but many great buildings were built with the stone. It's quite a prestigious stone to have the graves built. I think it's fantastic that many of the soldiers who died, this person died in 1919, age 21, how they are memorialised with this wonderful Portland stone. Which also they get looked after as well by the Commonwealth War Graves Commission. So when you're in a graveyard, do have a look out, because they are in many, many graveyards in the UK. I think I found him. There are just off the path here a couple of Russian Orthodox style crosses. You can just see here. Let's have a quick look to see. They're sort of at the back off the path. Yes, Alexander F. Kerensky. Somebody's laid some flowers here. Let's have a little quick talk about him and see why he's here. So here is Alexander Kerensky, and here to my left is his wife Olga, who died 5 years later. He died in 1970. He's buried here in Putney Vale Cemetery. Quick, who was Kerensky? Now, Kerensky actually had a bit of a revolutionary early life. His father, in fact, was Lenin's teacher, so they must have known each other. But also, Kerensky did play a role in the Dumas and was seen as quite friendly to the Tsar. So when the Tsar abdicated after the February Revolution, Kerensky was in a relatively good position, friends of everyone. Indeed, he was both in the provisional government and in the Petrograd Soviet, part of which represented the workers' provisional government, with a bit of a legacy of the Tsar and the Dumas. Initially, he was Minister of War, but by the July of 1917, the First World War was not going very well, and the Bolsheviks knew about this. There were food shortages, bread riots, so the Bolsheviks tried to take control first of all in the July days, and Kerensky stopped it. He got a lot of credit and elevated his position to leader of the provisional government. unfortunately, the honeymoon period for Kerensky doesn't last very long. By August of 1917, there is a revolt in the army. General Kornilov, with his guns, marches on Petrograd. For Kerensky to sort this problem out, though, he has to make a Faustian pact with the devil. He has to give guns, and he says to the Bolsheviks, led by Lenin, etc., yes, can you please fight off General Kornilov? This was a bad move, because by October, Kerensky has a threat from Bolsheviks who's given their guns. He has an angry General Kornilov on his right, the Bolsheviks on the left. 2 million soldiers have gone AWOL, the people are starving. It's going to end badly. And indeed, of course, the Bolsheviks raise a revolution in October, and they capture him and they arrest him. Kornilov manages to escape arrest, and he goes first to France and then briefly, interestingly, to Australia, till eventually he gets to America, to New York, where he settles. He teaches at universities, and eventually he dies not until 1970. So these events took place in 1917. It's a good long while later. And interestingly, my A-level history teacher at school had actually met Alexander Kerensky when Kerensky came to the University of Oxford to give a talk, and my history teacher met him and said he actually was one of the most boring people he's ever met, really disappointingly. Sorry, Alexander, not very respectful for where you are. I think you're great, but there we go. The other big question is then why on earth is he buried here? Well, there's an apocryphal story and there's a more likely story. The more likely story is that his son lived here, and so his son, when Alexander died, and then his mother died 5 years later, they brought the bodies here to Putney Vale and buried here. That makes more sense. The apocryphal story, which I wish would be potentially true, is of course he died in 1970, height of the Cold War. The Americans thinking this man associated with the Russian Revolution and communism, we don't want him necessarily here in our country being buried. Let's send him back to Russia. Well, the Russians, the Moscow, they thought, well, he was a villain towards the Bolsheviks. He tried to crush the communist revolution. So, no, we don't want him. What's halfway between Moscow and New York? Putney Vale Cemetery. So maybe they agreed on here and there was a deal done in the Westminster government. I doubt that's true, but it'd be interesting if it was. Well, there you have it. Alexander Kerensky, this key figure in our history course, is sort of just forgotten here by the fence, at Putney Vale Cemetery with the A3 and the sort of sirens that you can hear over there, and Wimbledon Common, just the bit there. It's sort of forgotten, really, and I think he plays such a big seismic moment, such a significant event of the 20th century. He played one of those key parts, I think, the go-between between the imperialist, old-fashioned, czarist Russia to the brand new communist revolution. There had to be a stopgap in between, and that stopgap was Alexander Kerensky. But do come along to Putney Vale. It actually is relatively peaceful. Oh, there is another Russian Orthodox grave there, but obviously there's quite a few people of that denomination here, not just Kerensky. Anyway, I digress. Do come along and have a look at Kerensky, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos. There's the Lenin in London one, which is quite well related to this as well. So please do have a watch, and thanks for watching. See you again.